thank you, Jana and Pilgrim and Rustler for the invitation to be part of this conversation, which I think is a very significant one. And thank you, Stephen, for your really stimulating and thoughtful and insightful presentation. I didn't come expecting to hear a Mormon who teaches in Catholic, who has taught in Catholic universities, make such rich use of Richard Niebuhr, and I was not expecting that, and I really loved it. And I will have a couple of comments to make in relation to what you had to say. But Jana, thanks also for telling me about the compasses. I had no idea that had happened. I've been on planes a lot today, and so I haven't been keeping up to date with social media. But I was asked to share a few things from my experience as president in relation to the theme and the topic, and so that's what I am prepared to do, and that's a good place to start with. As some of you know, I spent about 10 years here in the South Australian community in a talkback situation with local ABC radio. Every fortnight there'd be a half-hour conversation on themes that I didn't get to choose, with two presenters, a practicing Catholic and a recovering Baptist, and whoever happened to phone in, and that was it wasn't a planned relationship with them or the listening community, but it was a very rich one and one that I valued. And in that conversation, I was there as very clearly in my own mind and their minds, I was there representing Flinders University. So the Uniting Church listeners all knew I was the principal of their college, but we didn't talk about that. I was there representing Flinders University. So there was this strange thing going on with the Uniting Church, where I was sending secret messages all the time on their behalf, on your behalf, and effectively I was just trying to model how to engage with issues of public interest and spirituality in free conversation. And I got a lot of good feedback from the church, and I felt very supported. But what I had to do in those conversations was to play the professor, and that means helping people see different sides of a problem. So I was often criticised for sitting on the fence and not showing my hand what I thought, because I'd go to great efforts to make sure that the different sides of a point of view were being expressed properly. And that was my task. And over that almost a decade, the radio hosts and myself felt that we actually had made a difference to the public discourse in South Australia, because we could certainly see a difference in the conversations over that period as people became more articulate about their moral and religious points of view and better at listening to each other. And we got fewer calls from that chap over in the Eyre Peninsula, who's the chairperson of the South Australian Atheist Society. Yeah, you know the guy I mean. I've forgotten his name. I shouldn't. That's very rude of me. But he bowed out after about 3 years and let us go, because what had happened was we'd created this community which was like a tutorial every fortnight with an interesting topic, and we'd have people from all Christian denominations and no denomination participating in these conversations, and it was a great experience. Then I got into this role. And from before I was even a week into the role, I was being required to speak on behalf of the church in that kind of hectoring, scolding, moralising tone that the church requires of its president. And I must say, I found that an extremely difficult thing to do, because I still see things from both sides, but I'm supposed to say, these are the lines, and on behalf of the church I say things like, the government has lost its moral compass, and I think the government has, by the way. But yeah, so I just like to say that there's this thing going on, and let me say then a few more things about that process of interacting in the public sphere in the name of the church. The main things that I've had to make statements about, sadly, has been in relation to asylum seekers and refugees and our treatment of those people. Also around Indigenous issues. In fact, in that first week that I was president, the Stronger Futures legislation came in, replacing the intervention, and the need to very quickly back up our Indigenous brothers and sisters in protesting and saying no to that legislation meant that I had to immediately adopt this new role. And over the years, we've had to continue to push that matter. One of the things that I had to learn was how to deal with the church's own bureaucracy in this matter, because of course we have agencies within the Assembly and within the synods that have expertise in these areas, and they don't like blow-ins, presidents, offering too much leadership, let's put it that way. They like a president who's available to be deployed in ways that fit the strategies that they have. And I get their point of view. There I go again. I understand, because these are experienced people who have long-term plans about how to go about lobbying and influencing, and they don't like a president who goes native or something, and that's very politically incorrect. But yes, and so a few times I've butted heads with my dear sisters and brothers and colleagues around these matters. And one of the areas where I think we've had some good creative conversations, and again, I think there's been a little bit of a shift, is in what's the purpose of the church making statements about anything. Because one of the things we know is that government couldn't care less. And we need to understand that very, very clearly. We don't have any influence in relation to government in these matters. And if you want to see evidence of that, since 2000, the Uniting Church and other denominations have been lobbying hard and making consistent public statements about the immorality of automatic detention of detainees and the detention of children and offshore processing of asylum seekers and refugees. And it's made not a jot of difference to the unfolding of those policies. If anything, by any measure, they've become more and more inhumane as that period has rolled on since about 2000. Now, that doesn't mean we stop speaking, and there's two reasons to speak. One is so that somebody is speaking, and that's important. But the other is, and this is one of the things I'd want to say, whenever I make a public statement, I'm actually talking to the church. And those who put words into my mouth and deploy me have come to understand that's my view. Whatever I'm doing, I'm speaking to the church, because you are actually the people in the community who are interested in what the president might say on your behalf in the public sphere. And so one of the things that I've tried to do hard is to use the language of Scripture and the language of our faith and theology in relation to the issues that I'm being addressed. So the process is the relevant department in the Assembly will give me a text, a draft of the statement, including my quotes. Okay, that's right. This is normal practice. And then it's my role to, what they'd like me to do is to approve it, but what I do is I rewrite it, and including my quotes. But I must say that over the years that I've been president, I find I do much less rewriting of both the text and my quotes, as they've got to understand my perspective, and I appreciate that very much. In fact, our media director of communications, I think he's read all of my books and many of my articles, and most of my students haven't done that. And he's just done that to understand where I'm coming from and the sort of thing that I'd say, and he's got pretty good at it. So then I rewrite it, and the thing that I've had to do is to take statements that I've received, which frankly could have come from the Greens or anyone like that, and turn them into something that is unambiguously Christian, still expressing the moral core that they're trying to share, but is clearly coming from the Christian church and speaking to Uniting Church members saying, this is who we are. Now, I'm also doing that in the knowledge that most Uniting Church participants vote for one of the conservative parties. This is one of the things we happen to know about us. You wouldn't know that if you looked at our website and stuff like that, and the public perception of it. But frankly, most of us in this fellowship are politically fairly conservative, and that shouldn't be very surprising because Australians are pretty conservative, and Christians tend to be conservative members of a conservative society. So it would stand to reason that it wouldn't be surprising to have that in our membership. There's some survey data that will be appearing shortly that will bear this out, but I thought I'd share that with you. So in this conversation, I'm also trying to be respectful of the political views that are held in good conscience by our sisters and brothers. At the same time, and this is why it's important that I do it in language of Bible and theology to show how the faith that we hold in common actually has political dimensions. Now let me quickly, have I got a couple of minutes?
Yes, I turned it on.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say a couple of things, thoughts that I had as I was listening to Stephen's comment. And again, this arises largely from my experience. One of the things that's been a tremendously important part of my experience as president is coming in contact with the cultural diversity both of the Uniting Church and of the Christian Church as a whole. As you're probably aware, the Christian Church is in tremendously good health globally. In the global south, the church is growing very strongly and playing a tremendously important role in peacemaking and in community building. And the Uniting Church has relationships with these churches, very good relationships, and it's my privilege to go to things like the World Council of Churches Assembly and to go to China and Fiji and Korea and so forth and be engaged by this vital growing church. And within the Uniting Church, we have diaspora communities that are similarly growing and strong, vibrant communities. So a lot of the conversation we have around our role has to take into account of the variety of Christian experience. So when Stephen mentioned some of the positive things that were going on in that early period, the things that are implicit in the Christian gospel that were making a positive difference and would later be expressed in some of the core liberal values, what I thought of was the way in which I've learnt that the gospel has been crucial in places like South Sudan and West Papua, where the communities, really the only thing that turns those warring clans into nations and communities is a common faith in Jesus Christ. And that may seem trite to us who are so familiar with the idea of Christianity, but it's a revolutionary force for good in those kind of communities. So in West Papua, where the church is and the people are under great stress, it's actually the church that's making that the West Papuans a people, not an institution church, but the gospel that tells people who otherwise would be fighting each other that they're brothers and sisters, and living out of that. So that's one of the important ways in which the gospel works for the common good. Another thing that I'd want to mention is, I was thinking of this in your comments about the feelings of persecution. Of course, persecution is very real, a part of the church's experience currently. And I've had the honour of meeting with church leaders from other parts of the world where the church is actively being persecuted, in Asia and in the Middle East and in Africa. But within the Uniting Church too, just last week I was having conversations with a Uniting Church minister, a Vietnamese refugee, who talked to me frankly about his time in prison and being tortured and what the faith meant to him there. And the same week I was speaking to an Iraqi Uniting Church minister. He's in Australia as a refugee. He's a Methodist in Iraq, and he was weeping. We were weeping together. He's from Nineveh, and you'd be aware that ISIS now controls that area, and the Christians are being eliminated by various means from those communities. His family, his friends, he knows those people, and their experience is part of the experience within the Uniting Church, because we've got the warm bodies in our fellowship who are connected to those warm bodies, and we're part of one body of Christ. So I was thinking about that experience of persecution and thinking within our fellowship we have a significant minority of people, and I'm thinking particularly of the Sudanese community, the Indonesian folk within the United Church. There's a significant national conference of those people. And of course those from the Middle East and some other places who are in the church, having experienced in their own bodies persecution and continue to experience vicariously the suffering of their family and their friends in other places.